So welcome back to another episode, and welcome to my top 10 console RPGs of all time. Yes, I'm doing this list, and I originally did this list 9 years ago in a video, and I went back and I was looking at that video and I was like, this is an interesting list, and I definitely understand why I picked everything at that time for what it was, and I enjoy the list. But I thought, man, my tastes have changed a little bit. There's been a lot more, bigger games that have come out over the last 9 years to really shake up the list. And so I decided to tackle this list right now. Now, before I begin, I have to say, this is just my opinion. These are my personal fun choices. I'm having a good time today talking about some RPGs that are brand new and some that are classics. So there's no definitive list out there. This is just for fun. But I'll ask you guys, what are some of your favorite JRPGs, console RPGs? Let me know down below. Okay, before I begin, there has to be a few honorable mentions because these are a part of this list. They should be in the top 10. They're that good. Here we go. Tales of Arise. My God, we played this and we couldn't believe it. It came out of nowhere, and I like the Tales series. I had no idea how great this game was going to be. Gameplay-wise, graphic-wise, music-wise, I was totally taken back by it. It's a high recommendation of a game as well. If you haven't played Tales of Arise, it should be in the list. And next up is Elden Ring. It had to be included as well. It's a remarkable achievement. It's an action RPG for sure, but it bores so much of the RPG mechanics. And I mean, it creates a world setting that I've never seen the likes of. You know, it's just so dark and so gigantic and so evil and twisted, and it's such beautiful world building and amazing to run around. Even if you get killed all the time, it's so much fun to see that and to explore, and this is a really, really big recommendation, and it is part of the list as well. Okay, I'm gonna do a 2-for-1 here. These two games are absolutely honorable mentions. We got Shin Megami Tensei 5, superb game, my game of the year for last year, and Persona 5 Royal, another incredible game. Both of these games deserve to be in this top 10 list, and they were there. I had everything on the table and I was like, man, I can't take these out of it, and I don't want to take these out of it. They are so fantastic, and they deserve to be absolutely in this top 10 list. Okay, now we get to the top 10 list, and I want to say there's no particular order to these. Yes, number one has to be number one. You know it. It has to be that way. But all of the other games are equal to me. I think they're all amazing in their own right. And let's begin with our first. Skyrim. Yes, this very unknown game. Not a lot of people have probably played it. It's probably not on your console of choice. Absolutely not. It's on every console of choice. And then some. They've really overdone this game. And it doesn't matter for me because I played it when it first came out. And it was everything I could have ever wanted in an RPG. Just the first-person mechanics, the combat, the visuals, the exploration, talking to different townspeople, just talking to people in general, all the branching story paths you could go on. This game was a dream come true. And I remember sitting, playing it, having a beer one night going, this is unbelievable. I can't believe what I'm playing. And this has a place in RPG history. Yes, you might be able to find it on your console of choice, but this is it, number 10 for me, Skyrim. What a remarkable achievement. Now we have to go back to a time when I was 20 years old, and I was highly anticipating this game. I played a couple of Final Fantasy games before it, but I didn't know that this game was absolutely going to change the way that I processed graphics on the Super Nintendo, and that is Final Fantasy III, also known as Final Fantasy VI in Japan. This game, I mean, you could talk about this game for an hour and a half of what it was and what it did at the time. And yes, is there other RPGs that have come out that look better and, have better play mechanics and stuff like that? Sure, but you can't take away from when this game came out and what it did to an entire generation. An entire generation. Everybody who didn't know about RPGs was like, Final Fantasy III, everybody heard about it, everybody had to check it out. There's one thing you gotta say, yes, I'm going on about the graphics here for a sec, but you'd never seen anything like this on the Super Nintendo with sprite graphics this way. They'd pushed this machine to the max. I still can't believe that they were able to do what they were able to do with the sprites in this game. Never mind the combat, never mind all the characters you could collect, never mind the world that you could explore. This game took me a very long time to finish, and there's some emotional bits in it that are so fantastic. You know, the characters that you lose, characters that you can get back. Final Fantasy III is an absolute classic for all time. And I remember when we went from Final Fantasy III to Final Fantasy VII, 6 to 7, man, it divided the Final Fantasy community because everybody was like, no, I love the sprites, and everybody's like, no, I love the way they're going with this futuristic look with Final Fantasy, and there was a bit of a battle going on, but we can all look back now and say Final Fantasy III is a game that I believe the younger generation should play. I think you should play this. For me right now, I bought this very copy 28 years ago, and I can't believe it. I remember going into the store and buying it from, it was like a Master Player, it was a place I got it from, and the guy sold it to me, he's like, have fun, and I said, oh, I will, and I've said that in other videos, and I still remember that moment, and I went home, and I checked out the opening, walking through the snow with the mechs, and I was like, I'm in for one heck of an adventure, and this did me, man, for a long time. And back then you didn't get a lot of RPGs, but when you got it, it was big, and this game was big. And yes, we're still on the Super Nintendo here, because the Super Nintendo was an incredible machine. It was an RPG making machine, and it made absolute classics back then that people still to this day are talking about, like this small little time traveling game, Chrono Trigger. Akira Toriyama art, Sakaguchi, Yuji Horii, the Dream Team, the trio. This game came together and did everything you could ever wanted in an RPG. I loved the combination attacks with your characters. I like the graphics. Again, we were at sprite-based perfection at this level with Squaresoft back then. They were really churning it out. And just look at the absolute brilliance of Akira Toriyama art. And I think this is still his height. This is when he was hitting his height of his character designs and things like that. And everybody poured their love into this game, and it showed through all of the different time periods and the emotion and the music. This game came together in a way that I don't think they knew would be remembered all these years later. And I put it in an episode of mine saying 10 out of 10 RPGs. This is a 10 out of 10 game. It's one that I would suggest for younger people to go and try out and see what everybody's talking about. Why was this game so great at the time? As I say, it was the gameplay, it was the graphics, it was the music, it was the story concept of the time traveling, the different time periods. It was brilliantly done, and it's still brilliant now. I was playing it weeks ago, and I was like, God, this still holds up incredibly well. Now, I was talking about a controversy that happened back in the day, going from Final Fantasy VI to 7. Yes, it broke the Final Fantasy community for a bit, but it didn't break me because guess what? I love 6 and I love Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy VII right here. Yes, it was a big departure. We were going futuristic in so many different ways. The graphics were in 3D. It was no longer on a Nintendo console. Cats and dogs living together. It was mass hysteria. And I don't think I've ever seen the buildup of hype to a video game, especially an RPG, in history. I've never seen anything like it. People who didn't even know what RPGs were buying this game. There was commercials on TV, there was posters in subways. Everybody wanted to know what this was, and you know what? Sony pushed it with a huge marketing campaign, and for me, I didn't need to buy into any of that. I was already hyped. I was already really into this. Me and my friends were counting the days for this to get released. And when it came out, did it live up to the hype? Well, history says absolutely, right? I remember just sitting in my parents' basement playing this game with small tears, looking at the graphics going, how video games can ever get better than this? How is it possible? And you know what? Years later, they attempted it with the Final Fantasy VII Remake. And you know what? Both of these to me go hand in hand. We always have the original 7 for the purists out there. but we got a full 3D remake, reimagining, and I wanted to put these together because they're always been separated by the fans, and I think they can both go hand in hand. The 7 remake is a beautiful reimagining of Final Fantasy VII, and I think it's remarkable. I think it's really fantastic. Does it take away my love for 7, the original? Does it replace it? Absolutely not. No, they both are hand in hand, but it was the spectacle of the graphics at the time. The cinematics were unbelievable. The music, the combat, the characters, the running around the world and exploring. This game, amazing. This game, amazing. Classics for all time, that is for sure. Now, looking at my original list, this couldn't have been there because it wasn't out at the time. Man, would I love to have played it back then, 9 years ago, but I got to play it a few years ago, and I was absolutely blown away by Dragon Quest XI. Dragon Quest XI, it'll go down as a classic. I think, I'm speculating here that I think this has the most reach of any Dragon Quest game in history because people were all over the place on social media when this game came out saying, this is the first Dragon Quest I've ever played, and I've heard that a lot. I've heard that a great lot, and I think it's a great place to jump in to start if you've never played a Dragon Quest game. All Dragon Quest games are different, but there's similar themes, similar sound effects, and similar monsters are brought back, and it's a real comfort zone game, and one that I absolutely love slipping into all of the time. I love the character designs. I always love the traditional combat that hasn't really changed. They brought it into 3D, but they still kept it turn-based in its original way, and just the brand new game, running around on your horse, exploring the world. I fell in love, and I mean, the graphics, I know, you can talk about graphics, but you gotta say, in this game, they were beautiful. Absolutely. Fantasy, beautiful. I stared at this game when I was first playing it on PS4, and I was like, this is an amazing looking game. The best Dragon Quest looking game of all time, that's for sure, but it had to be included in the list. It definitely deserves to be there. And for this next one, you'll have to excuse me while I get it off the shelf. My original copy of Earthbound, I got when I was 21 years old. You know, I was sitting last night thinking about this because I knew I was going to shoot this video today, and I was like, is it nostalgia? Is it nostalgia? And I put a lot of deep thinking into it, and no, it is not nostalgia. Is it nostalgic? Yes. Is it a classic of all time? Yes. This game was a bomb when it came out. Nobody was interested in it except for me. I was reading about Nintendo Power, and I was like, oh my god, Goonies. It's Goonies. This is the kind of game I want to play, set in a modern day environment, which was very, very different for me to do. I was usually playing fantasy style games, usually set in medieval eras. So this was a breath of fresh air, and I didn't know how much of a breath of fresh air it would be. It's magical. That's the only way I can talk about this game. The music is magical, the characters are magical, the interactions, with the other characters in the world are magical. I don't want to even ruin this game. I mean, this is one of these games, I know it's going to sound so cheesy. This game is pure love. And I remember one of my friends back in the day, Stop Skeletons from Fighting, saying such a thing. And I agree with that. It's years later since he originally talked about this game. And I have always thought that this game is just a beautiful thing. And you can get it on most Nintendo consoles nowadays. Yes, the original game goes for a lot of money, and it only goes for a lot of money because they didn't make a lot of them, or they were all put in the discount bin and destroyed, after that. I'm so happy that I have my original copy, not for any monetary value, for the pure love of the game. It is magical. Now, this next game is interesting because I originally played it on the Wii, and I was not that impressed with it. Really, I wasn't impressed. I thought the graphics were kind of, okay, we're in a high definition time, and it wasn't really giving me that high definition feeling, because we're in 40p at the time with it. But Nintendo did something crazy. They went back to the drawing board, and they updated it and remastered it as Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, right here. This game absolutely deserves to be here, along with Xenoblade Chronicles 2. My wife would kill me if I didn't put this in. She absolutely loves the game, and Xenoblade Chronicles 3. But for me personally, this first game won me over. I was just blown away by the world building in it, by the world creation, and you got to talk about that for this game. and how gigantic it was. I mean, and I was just like, wow, they've really knocked it out of the park, and it's become an exclusive Nintendo RPG series now. And it's a remarkable one, and it's gotten bigger and bigger with every release. And it's the first game that really won it over for me, with the characters, with the gigantic epic storyline they go on, all the way to the end of the game, which gets absolutely crazy. What do you guys think of Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition? Superb, superb storytelling, graphics, world building. Definitely deserves to be here. Now for my next pick, I wish I could put the entire series in this top 10 list, but that wouldn't work, would it? So I had to pick one more Dragon Quest game, and it's a goodie. It's a real goodie, and I hope one day it gets a remake, and that is Dragon Quest VIII right here. What a remarkable game. I originally played the demo, and I was completely sold. I was like, I cannot believe how great this was on the PS2. And I'd played all the Dragon Quest games up to this point, and I knew at the time, I'm like, this is the best Dragon Quest game there is. Compared to 11 kind of really took center stage with it now, but 8 really was doing some amazing things. And I think in a lot of ways, 8 is better than 11. And I think because I like the difficulty level of 8, because you go to an area and you're like, oh, I can't go here, or you get destroyed, and there's a bit more of you needed to level up a little bit more and strategically plan which directions you were gonna go in. But neither here nor there. I absolutely love this game for the graphics, for the characters. I mean, like Jessica, like Yangus. I mean, the characters in this game are beautiful. And I remember my wife finishing this game. I think this is her favorite RPG of all time from her top 10 list. She loves this game. She loved the game because at the end of it, she was crying with the storyline. She just thought it was so beautiful. And I remember that moment. It was a really nice moment. There's a lot of really great combat in here, a lot of real great exploration moments in here, and one that I highly, highly recommend, Dragon Quest VIII. Okay, this had to be in here. It is a bit of an action RPG game, and I kind of pushed out Zelda for this because I know Zelda's more of an action style of game. It's got a little bit more RPG elements in Breath of the Wild, but we won't go into all that. I decided to include this because it was in my original list, and I agree with this. And you'd be like, why did you pick this particular one when there is so many other easy choices? And that is Ys Books 1 and 2. Now, why would I pick Ys Books 1 and 2 over all of the rest of the Ys games? I mean, Ys 8 and 9 and 7 and 6, I played them all. They're all really amazing games. Why would I pick Ys Books 1 and 2? For me, my reasoning is this. It was the beginning of the franchise, and this, on the TurboGrafx PC Engine in Japan, it was a game changer at the time, and that's why I'm picking it. You'd never seen graphics like it, or sound, or voice, or audio, music like this, because it was for the first time. I know we all take it for granted now. It was one of the very first CD games ever released on a console, and the first ever RPG released on a console on CD. This was a big deal. This was a big deal. I remember, as I said, friends of mine coming over. Nobody could believe that the characters were talking and you could hear their voices. I know. You can't believe that now. And you see them full body on screen. You're like, whoa, I haven't seen anything like that before. And never mind the orchestrated music, which was just so fantastically done with guitar riffs and things. I mean, you'd never heard anything, a soundtrack like it in a game where basically the combat is just bumping into enemies. And you'll say, well, that's very simplistic. And I'm like, I get it, but it was still really, really good. And it had 2 different games in it, Ys Books 1 and Ys Books 2. And I got it Christmas morning. I was finished it the next day. I finished Ys Books 1 the first day. I'm like, boom. I had my friend Andrew come over that morning, and we annihilated it. And I was like, oh my God. But you know what? It didn't matter because I played through this game so many times that it's okay. I got my Christmas fun that kept on giving throughout the years up till now. And Ys Books 1 and 2, what a classic to start an entire franchise that I absolutely adore, as you might know on the channel. Now, we're at that point, and you know what it is. You know what it is for a lot of you out there who've been with me for a long time. I've talked about this game too many times, but we'll get right to it here, and that is Fantasy Star on the Sega Master System. And if I could, I would include the other Fantasy Star games in here. Maybe not so much 3, but the other Fantasy Star games deserve to be in here, especially 2 and 4. 4 especially is right here. It should be in the top 10 list. It should be. Fantasy Star, at the time, back in 1988, was a game changer. You've never seen anything like it. I've talked about it so many times. The monsters that were actually animated, with backgrounds that were animated. You could see your attacks on the enemies. It was, for a kid in the late 80s, a dream come true to be playing tabletop RPGs, and then you could go home and play a game like this by yourself. You hadn't had things like this, not like this. You had some PC games, but not like this. Fantasy Star was a game changer, and it was way, way ahead of its time, and it's really, really sad that Fantasy Star, the main series, has been forgotten in time. Yes, we got Fantasy Star Online, which is also should be in the top 10 list. We got Fantasy Star Online, and then Fantasy Star Online 2, a New Genesis now, but I still crave to have a Fantasy Star 5 one day from Sega, and you know what? We'll never get it. It's been so many years. I started this show 14 years ago to remember forgotten games, and unfortunately, this now is a forgotten game to Sega. Yes, they're milking it in the online game, but the true treasure of a one-player experience has been forgotten to Sega, and that's unfortunate. They're not the same company they used to be, and I understand that, that's for sure. But this man, this game, I absolutely adore it. As I say, if there's ever a terrible fire in here, baby, I grab my baby, my wife, I get them out to safety, and I'd run back into the flames for this and my Kabuki Troy. For sure, because this means something more than anything, and I would never sell this for, well, I never would in a million years. It's got so much history to it, and it means so much to me. So I will ask you guys, what are your favorite RPGs of all time? Let me know down below. Do you agree with some of my list? Do you not agree? Let me know. We're all here to have a bit of fun. And let me tell you something. Thank you for watching today. I really had a lot of fun talking about some of these old games. I even had a little bit of shivers here because I really wanted to come in and talk about the RPGs that I grew up with that really meant something to me. And I wanted to share it with you guys. So thank you for watching. And anyways, guys, until next time.